All right, moving along, let's go ahead and bring to the podium our VP of Programs, Beth Knox, for today's main event with Tim Shriver. Beth?
Thank you, President Jeff. I know many of us have been steeling ourselves for this week. In the best of times, election week is an emotional roller coaster filled with winners and losers, high hopes and high anxiety, expectations, and sometimes disappointment. So as your program chair, I wanted to find a speaker today who could bring a message of hope and unity to all of us, regardless of the election results. Tim Shriver is the longtime chairman of Special Olympics, and someone I had the privilege of working with when I produced the 2018 Special Olympics USA Games. He is also a best-selling author, film producer, husband, and father. His passion is education, and he's a founding force within the social and emotional learning movement. So please welcome Mr. Tim Shriver to share how his initiative Unite is promoting national unity and solidarity across differences, and how each of us can be part of this new groundswell of change. Tim, take it away.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. I love the idea. I think President Jeff, you said put some love in the chat. I love the idea. I'm too discombobulated to put love in the chat, but if I could summarize being on your part of your club for these first 20 minutes, I would just say sending a lot of love to all of you. Stephen, thank you for the beautiful prayer. John and Todd, I'm looking around for the work on the foundations and the fundings and supports. Catherine, of course, added to that. And just to be in the company of people. And I know, by the way, that the speaker, at least in my experience when I was live with you guys a few years ago, it was very clear to me that in the Rotary tradition, the speaker is a sort of a nice to have, but the real goal is to have the camaraderie and partnership and fellowship of the club. And so while I'm grateful to be invited and honored to be invited, I know that this is really a moment for each of you to be able to hear and see and know that you're in this together and that the fellowship remains. So if you tune me out and start chatting with each other privately, I'll consider that a success in my role here today. I'm gonna take just a few minutes, I hope, to, at a difficult time. I mean, when Beth asked me, Beth and I worked together, so I got to the point where, as everyone knows, if you've worked with Beth, you do whatever Beth tells you. So when she told me to show up on the day after the election and try to describe strategy for uniting the country, I should have known better than to try to take this on, but I'll do my best and really just offer what I hope are a few little glimpses of where I think the hope and possibilities lie. And I'm gonna share my screen and get us started with this slide here, which I hope will, this is a picture that was taken in the late 1969. It's a photograph from the moon of the Earth. And when it was taken, the astronauts thought, wow, if we human beings saw this, we would see that we're just one small planet. We would see how beautiful our planet is, how fragile, how suspended in the midst of the vastness of the universe it is. They thought, my goodness, Earth Rising, as this photograph is known as one of the top, I think, 100 photographs of the 20th century. They thought this would change us. And the person with the quote down at the bottom of the screen thought so too. This is from Dr. King. And I just invite you, I think at the end, Father, of your prayer, you invited a moment of silence. I'm going to offer just a quick moment of silence with the words here at the bottom and invite you just to draw them inward. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hatred cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. These words of Dr. King also, I think many people heard thinking that we as a family, we as Americans, we as human beings, that we could get better at uniting. We could see beyond race, ethnicity, boundaries, identities, that we could see ourselves as one in light and love. It seems easy to say, but draw in for a moment, to a moment, if you will, if it comes to mind, of light and love for you. as I was thinking about our time together, I thought to myself, I was trying to imagine being Paul Harris, the founder of the Rotary movement, being in Chicago 115 years ago, as I understand it at least, feeling like the small community from which he'd come, the fellowship, the communal feeling was missing. That sense of darkness and fear and anonymity that he felt in that big city of Chicago at the time. He wanted to change with light, with easy camaraderie, with maybe love even. In the history of this Rotary movement lies the foundation of the human hunger for connection and the willingness to do the work to bring it to life. It is also in our own little Special Olympics movement. So I'm gonna escape this slide for a second and invite you to just take a minute to watch this short selection from our Special Olympics community that was done. Wow, what's all that rest of that noise? This was done just a few months ago at the beginning of COVID. And again, I invite you just to watch this just short 2 minutes. It's another alternative to the musical traditions to which we're all familiar. It's another way of connecting from their voice, the voice of those thousands of athletes you welcomed to Seattle a few years ago under Beth's leadership. Just check out what they chose to share in this moment. Okay.
This one's for all the doctors out there.
When the night has come
and the land is dark,
and the moon is the only
light we'll see.
No, I won't be afraid.
No, I won't be afraid.
just as long
as you stand
by me. So darling, darling, stand by me.
Oh, stand by me.
oh stand now.
Stand by me.
Stand by me.
If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountain
Should crumble to the sea.
I won't cry, I won't cry.
no, I won't shed a tear, just as long
As you
Stand by me.
So darling, darling, stand by me.
oh, stand by me, oh, stand now.
Stand by me, stand by me.
To all the doctors, nurses, and first responders,
Thank you for keeping us safe.
you are all our champions. Thank you.
So I hope that little selection from, and I want to, again, I'm not going to spend too much time pausing here, but I do want to note and invite you to note the great diversity of voices there, the great humility of the voices there. I dare say the great fragility of the voices there, and the great strength of those voices. It's why at times I feel like we look to all the wrong places for the sources of our deepest willingness to transcend boundaries. We look to all the stuff on the news last night and this morning, and no matter where you stand, but you won't hear from those folks about the solution to our country's problems. You won't hear from them about the tone and tenor we need. You won't hear from them about strategies and policies, frameworks, and all that kind of stuff. You'll hear from other people. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of smart people, but sometimes I think we have to touch another side of ourselves. We're divided. And I mentioned, I want to just show the statistics here as if you need to hear them. But I want to just highlight the one here in the right column. 1 in 4 of us have broken off a relationship, a personal relationship. That's almost, well, a quarter of Americans have ended a close friendship or a family relationship because of the pandemic of division. We have pandemics of racism, of inequality, of disease. I would submit to you, our problems are not getting solved, at least in part because of the pandemic of divisiveness, that we don't sing that song you just saw as a country. We don't stand by each other. We look at pictures like this, and some of us see, I mean, you can put it in the chat, give me some love. How many see a rabbit? And some people will go, there's no rabbit there. There's only a duck. And of course, it's not that hard. I don't mean to make this simple. The reality of the world today is distinct and different and challenging for many of us. And we do see things that are serious differently. But sometimes we're looking at the exact same reality and we're just talking past each other. And here you see what I think, what I'm quite sure Paul Harris saw in his time. The relationships of shared meaning that he hungered to build through the Rotary clubs. Bob Putnam's new book on this, I'd recommend to all of you. His recipe, Putnam's recipe, looking back at a previous time of division, was what do we need? We need organizations that build relationships of shared meaning like the Rotary clubs. We need a resurgence of civic commitment, of local small businesses, of people willing to transcend boundaries. Putnam's conclusion, maybe many of you may know him, the author of Bowling Alone, one of our great contemporary social scientists. In his new book, his conclusion is that what we need is a resurgence of civic commitment to organizations of shared purpose and shared meaning. Sounds a lot like Rotary clubs to me. And I don't mean that just because I'm on here with you guys. I mean it because we need you. Downtown Seattle needs you. Young people need you, people of color need you. The country needs a resurgence of the kind of commitment and civic pride and social belonging that our institutions, that your institutions have built over the year. So I ask a question, who's gonna wear the uniform of the Uniter? In this day and age, if you had to pick an institution that would take the mantle of this moment, not to deny our differences, but to actually bring us together. Where is the uniform going to be worn? Who will teach our children? And sometimes I'd like to think you're going to get the answer on the next slide. Put it, I mean, I don't mean to be ordering people around. I'm a teacher by training, but put it in the chat. Who can do this? Is it our educators? Is it our political figures? Is it our law enforcement figures? Is it our business leaders? Is it our military? Is it, go down the list. Who is going to take the leadership in this moment the way Paul Harris took it over a century ago? Because nothing less than that level of commitment is necessary now. So I want to tell you where I think some of the leadership's coming from. It's coming from teachers. Now, here's an example of what we're teaching through social and emotional learning programs in our schools today. And I won't go through this in great detail, but I invite you to recognize that 6-year-olds are learning to do things that most of our elected officials cannot do. And we chuckle, I chuckle, of course, maybe it sounds like a good line. It's a disastrous insight. Now, most 6-year-olds can do this exercise. They can recognize when they feel angry. They can notice it, which already requires a little bit of metacognition. They can think to themselves, I need to stop. I need to stop me. They can put their arms like this on their shoulders and drop into their shell. They can deep breathe and self-regulate and calm and develop perspective. They can use positive self-talk, and they can come out of their shells when they're ready and think of real solutions to problems. Now, that's 6-year-olds. How many people in our public life, in our media, are actually trying to reduce stress and anxiety instead of building it up? Here's another lesson we're teaching in high schools. This is taught through a program called School Connect, learning how to disagree, guess what, without being disagreeable. I just throw some of these things up here, but look at the strategies on the right column. These are strategies taught to young people about how to have difficult conversations, provide equal opportunities, presume positive intent. Right there, you might as well turn off every cable news channel on your television, right, left, and center. Because the food of this media culture, and I'm quite angry at our media. I mean, I have friends, my sister's in the media, a lot of people, great, smart, dignified people, maybe some of you. But a lot of the business model today is presuming negative intent and driving fear because of it. It would not be acceptable in a decent 9th grade classroom in any high school in America. Be open-minded, speak your truth, and learn how to not be disagreeable. Abraham Lincoln's, I think, epic quote, "I don't like that person, I must get to know them better." As opposed to, "I don't like that person, I must destroy him, even if it's my fellow American." I'm going to skip this and just jump quickly to, Beth mentioned that in the last year, I've tried to gather a group of people to do something we call Unite.us. And I invite you to go to the website or follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Timothy Shriver or Tim Shriver. I can't keep track of all these things. We asked a simple question at the beginning of the pandemic to a bunch of Americans. We asked ex-convicts and ex-presidents. We asked priests and imams. We asked moms and dads. We asked movie stars and singers. We asked business leaders and children. How would you answer the call to unite? And I got to say, and you know, many of you have run events. Most of the time when I run an event or I'm in part of running an event, we ask 10 people to take on a role and 2 or 3 say yes and 7 or 8 say no. On this one, almost everyone said, "I want to be on it." Oprah said yes. Former president said yes. Yo-Yo Ma said yes. Julia Roberts said yes. People say, "Julia Roberts, how did you get her?" We asked. She doesn't do anything. And the reason is because there's a starvation out there. And I'm convinced of this even today, as we watch this drama play out in public life right now. And there's tension in the room, I'm sure. And I was on calls earlier today with people in tears, in families, deeply, deeply distressed about where we are. But they're distressed because they're starving for an alternative, in my view. Let me just go to the next slide and show a short video, the highlight video of a 25-hour. I was on for 25 hours, the streamathon we did. Here's just a 2-minute summary of it. I hope it comes through. Can you hear that?
Merhaba. Ciao. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Nie wszystko super.
My name is Archbishop Thabo Makgoba, joining this call to unite from Cape Town in South Africa.
I am so privileged to be with you here in Montgomery, Alabama.
We're coming to you from Manila, Philippines.
I am joining the call to unite to bring the joy of story time to children around the world.
My call is to make sure that we unite people by feeding them.
I've been doing my best to spread positivity.
Develop the skills of empathy and compassion.
Take a stand for those who need help the most.
Slow down our own breath, our own being, our own body in this particular moment.
Hundreds of millions of families across the world find themselves at some of the lowest points that they've ever seen.
We're united in grief. We're united in horror.
And while we're all suffering in our own unique capacity,
we need not suffer alone.
In the face of our pain, we must not forfeit our dignity.
We are aware now as we have never been before.
This is the perfect opportunity for us to do what we're doing right now, to reach out, to bring people together.
I think of it as a massive reset for the world.
We certainly need a new normal.
The question really is, what type of normal do we want to get back to?
When we come together like this, it gives us the greatest opportunity to shift the way the world looks today and to really reimagine what the world will look like tomorrow.
People are capable of making huge, radical behavioral changes when they're motivated.
We don't have to wait until pandemic is over to unite. You know, this dream could come true right now.
We have a simple principle as uniters. We believe that we are one. Mothers and fathers, all kinds of monks, musicians, dancers, and all the gifts that humanity has to offer.
We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future.
There's no time for love like now.
This is the calling that we all are being urged to answer.
This is who we are.
Each of us at this moment needs to be a leader in our personal life, a leader in our communities, and a leader in the world.
May we all find our interconnectedness,
our place in humanity.
We rise or fall together, and we are determined to rise.
The most powerful force in the world is the individual who has realized their power to do good.
We're not just doing it for ourselves, but we're doing it for the sake of the entire planet.
Together, we can be able to walk this path towards healing.
I encourage our global community to answer the call for someone else by giving and volunteering.
Not just calling for unity, but take action.
Take action right here and right now.
We have to do more.
So we have to act as one.
We have to unite in common purpose. So join us in service, in generosity, in sharing your ideas. And when you hear the call, answer, here I am, send me.
So let me close with just a few thoughts. Being a uniter, one thing I've learned over the last many decades working with Special Olympics athletes, being a uniter doesn't mean you don't say what you believe. I posted this short quote here yesterday. I want to point out a uniter is a person with conviction, but that doesn't convict others. A uniter is a person who accepts that we have a common human dignity and doesn't try to take it away from anyone. A uniter is a person who believes deeply in the equality of all of us, but doesn't try to achieve that equality by relegating others to outsider status. These are all gifts each of you has, each of us have. But in a time when the opposite gifts are being reinforced repeatedly, we need a ground up force that meets the opposing energy and transforms the culture in which we live, not to mention the country. So I want to offer on this day that this last little quote here, from the beginning, our countries had two competing values. It's the free expression of our individual opinions, which we all value deeply. But there is also a second goal, which is to be the United States of America. They're out of balance. They're out of balance in our personal lives. They're out of balance in our communities. They're out of balance in our politics, in our media, many, many places. Rather than dwell on who got them out of balance, let's recognize that from the inside out, we have to start the shift. And we have to own the responsibility. And we can do it, in my view, at least. We will have many allies. Here's just a quote from Pharrell Williams, a pop star. I love this quote only because, you know, we think of these folks as being maybe disconnected from these deep values. But here's Pharrell Williams saying, I believe that the world only works with empathy and inclusion. Listen to what he says at the end of this. I'm choosing empathy. I'm choosing inclusion. I'm choosing love for everybody, just trying to lift everyone. Even when I disagree. You think he could have been in the classrooms learning how to turtle. Even when I disagree with someone, I'm wishing them the best and hoping for the best. Why? Because we can't win the other way. Uniting is not just an aspirational goal. It's the means to achieving the solutions to the problems that are most present in our lives. It's the means. And if you need one more piece of inspiration, I'll offer here one of my heroes of uniting. This is Scarlett Lewis with her little boy, Jesse. When this picture was taken, I think Jesse was 5, and Jesse lost his life at Sandy Hook at the age of 6. He was murdered. And in a country like ours, even these kinds of moments led to divisive political discussions. Scarlett could have gotten trapped in them, this side or that side of the political equation. Instead, she decided to write, with help and with advice and with experts, a curriculum for schools called the Choose Love Curriculum. And as you might imagine, Scarlett has dedicated this curriculum, the Choose Love curriculum, which is all over many, many states. I'm not sure if it's in Seattle, but she's dedicated it to the memory of her little boy who lost his life, but she also dedicates it to Adam Lanza, who robbed her little boy of life. Because she believes that if Adam Lanza had had a Choose Love curriculum, if I can put it in our language, a Uniters curriculum, he might not have ever taken the drastic steps he took. Now, Scarlett's capacity to see beyond her own pain is way beyond what I can imagine. But if you looked in that video closely, you saw the women of the Recovery Cafe, which is not far from where many of you work in Seattle, led by Killian No, who's doing extraordinary work to empower and unite people with their best selves. You might have seen the work of Special Olympics. You could see the work of artists and teachers. They're all there. So I want to offer an open invitation. I think I'm way out over time, but so I'll stop by saying, I'd like to invite, maybe we start with Seattle, but let's invite potentially Rotary clubs around the country to join with Unite and launch a series of town hall meetings, conversations. Doesn't cost anything, don't need any money for it, but let's commit ourselves. Let's consider at least committing ourselves as a club, as a group of concerned citizens on this day, with the future of our country hanging in the balance, and winners and losers. No matter who wins, there's going to be winners and losers in that race. But there's another race, which is the win-win race. How do we unite this country in common purpose and restore and build some new sense of what's possible when we solve problems together? I want to offer our small resources of Unite, and we're a small organization, but we've got ideas, we've got strategies, we've got training programs, we've got a network of people who want to join in telling a news story, and maybe together with the Seattle Rotary Club and with other Rotary clubs, we could push forward what Putnam challenges us to do, what I think all of our best selves challenge us to do, and what Scarlett here in this image challenges us to do as well. So thank you for having me. Thank you for all the support the clubs have given to the Special Olympics movement over many, many decades. Really since the founding of Special Olympics in 1968, Rotary clubs have been there. Thank you for the commitments you've made already, financial and otherwise, to your own city and to each other. And please see me as an ally in the work that lies before us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tim. And as current president, I'd like to take you up on your offer to collaborate on some type of pilot program, to collaborate between Unite and Seattle Rotary and see if we can expand that further. I also wanted to mention just very briefly that you were busy presenting, but the love was flowing throughout the chat session ever since your first video kicked off. So quickly, and then I'll give it over to Beth for all the questions we can squeeze in, but you touched on this issue of the cable networks and the role of media and news organizations. It seems like a lot of this destructiveness has been driven by the consolidation of media through deregulation. Do you have any additional thoughts on how to try and fix that? Because as long as cable companies and other types of new media are driven by the profit incentive, it seems like the screaming and shouting will never end.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people smarter than me thinking about this. One of my collaborators used to be the head of CNN, and he's talked a lot about the return of the fairness doctrine. For those of you that know, there was such a thing as a fairness doctrine years and years ago, where we hearken back to the good old days of impartial sort of big vision news. Another colleague of mine is working very hard on to demand regulatory changes to the algorithm being used by the social media platforms, because there's no question that they are not neutral platforms. They are sales-driven platforms using your data to feed you with that which will most trigger you. And so this is, the social media stuff is a whole new challenge. I think in the absence of those bigger changes, we need real campaigns to encourage each other to fast, to turn it off. You know, as much as we don't like, you know, and again, I could care less Fox, MSNBC. I've gotten to the point where, yes, I have strong political views about many things, but I think, as Arthur Brooks' great book is, the outrage industrial complex is aimed to profit from your fear and hatred. And we're Americans, so we have a choice. We can pay them, and make no mistake, you turn on CNN tonight, you're paying for this. And you're incentivizing them to feed you exactly what they fed you so far, or MSNBC or Fox. I mean, there's no question about it. And if you get your news from Twitter, you're paying someone, you're paying for it, to probably put you more and more into a bubble of self-reinforcing validation of your fears. So I have been on a news diet. I didn't watch the news from late June until last night. And all I can tell you is you'll feel better, even if you try for a week. I know it's a small thing, but you know, many of you are business owners. You know, if your customers start saying they don't like what you're doing, it causes us to change. I'm a small business owner. In fact, I have a small business in Seattle. I should promote it. I'm probably against the rules, right? To promote my ice cream, upside down ice cream, the QFC. I just did it. But if people don't like what you're selling, you have to change. So I think we have individual action here. And I really do believe the media is both social and traditional, needs to hear from us. If we, you know, if you agree with me. Now, again, I don't mean that we should be head in the sand, not know what's going on, and not be well informed. There's a lot of ways to be well informed without accessing the outrage industrial complex.
Beth, we've got like about 5 minutes for questions.
Okay, actually, and I do have one question here for you, Tim. One of the members asked, where did you get the House divided slide statistics from, and how were they gathered?
There's several. If I went back, if I had more time, I could, if people want them, I'd send the citations. Some of them are from polling data we did internally on the call to Unite. Some of them are from readily available Harris and Gallup polls. One of them is from the New York Times. The data on the individual breakdown of personal relationship is data we commissioned from Benenson Polling Group, very reputable, very prominent polling organization. So it's all, I would say, reputable. I mean, you know, polling data, as we see, isn't always right. So I don't mean to overplay the data, but it's all from polls, most of them within the last 12 months.
Great. Tim, maybe you can just share a little bit about what you see are the next opportunities and next steps for Unite.
Yeah. Well, we want to try to do three things. First, we want to make the case. So we're working with people like Pete Wehner and Mike Gerson and other great writers to begin to publish an analysis, a slightly deeper analysis of what the Uniter mindset is here. We're drawing on Einstein, who said, as a well-used quote, "You can't solve a problem with the mindset that created it. We need a new mindset." So we're going to do work on some thought leadership with neuroscientists and psychologists and faith leaders and political scientists and sociologists, anthropologists, to make the case that, I dare say, the world is on the verge of a new kind of a mindset, and it's coming around us. But we haven't quite named it, and we haven't quite taught it, and we haven't quite learned how to practice it. So that's number one, thought leadership. Number two, we want to build a media platform. Almost every poll we did tells us that people believe we're much better than we see ourselves on the media. And even the kids, I'll tell you just one very painful story. We did a focus group with middle and high school kids in Iowa. They went on and on about how their school was doing better. There was no bullying. The things had gotten better. The cliques were down. But then one of the students turned to me and said, you know, but when I get home, I see that adults are the bullies. Now, we have to build media platforms that tell the story, the cutting edge, the exciting, the path breaking, the pioneering, this, you know, just as good a story of who we are as the bullies are telling us. So we need media. And when you talk about putting people like Oprah and Van Jones and folks like that on the team, these are people who have great reputations, and many, many Republicans too, great reputations for building media platforms. We want to help consolidate some of them and put them together. And then finally, we're trying to build a little incubator, like a venture capital firm of Uniter Solutions. We've started, you can check them out at unite.us. We have 3 up and running. A major initiative with the Governors Association and public health departments on COVID to try to transcend the politicization of COVID and just offer shared resources to people who want to actually try to solve problems, practically speaking, in their own communities across all red-blue divides. We have a second initiative on police community connections and racism in policing and ending that. We have 12 cities that have signed on for new community councils. Again, police departments, Black Lives Matter, unions, community activists, all collaborating to come up with creative new solutions, not bipartisan solutions, but creative new solutions. So we've got a little venture capital type team, we've got a media team, and we have a thought leadership practice. We're trying to just support, and when I say we, this is an open sourced collaborative of people working together across a lot of these differences. And those are some of the strategies that have just emerged, frankly, in the last several months.
Great, thank you. Well,
but that doesn't mean we don't need you guys. We need you guys.
Well, I think that is an excellent idea. And I know one that our club would be very willing to and interested in pursuing. So let's continue that conversation, Tim.
Right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you for including me and for being a leader for a long time. Mr. President, thank you for having me and for indulging
let's all show
the possibility
Tim
of something new.
Let's all show Tim a little love in the chat window. And Tim, if you can linger with us for the last 4 minutes, I think you'll appreciate the wrap up.